So, if you know anything about the history of the Kimball family in America, of which I am a Kimball, you may have heard of a book called The History of the Kimball Family in America by Leonard Morrison and Stephen P. Sharples, and that most Kimballs in America can trace their heritage back to a man named Richard who came to Watertown, Massachusetts in 1640. Well, we are about to embark on a journey going back further through Richard and his grandfather's history in the county of Suffolk, England. So he came from Rattlesden, England, in the county of Suffolk, which we are here today. So I'll let you have a look around. Like most of these small England towns, it's mainly just one road that goes right through the town, and there's always a church, and the church is usually the oldest building in all of these little towns that we're going to visit on this tour. And this is St. Nicholas Church, and we'll come look inside. So Richard was born in 1595 to his father Henry IV. We'll revisit his fathers later on. Henry is buried in this cemetery according to our Ancestry.com records, but we do know that these people were, and you can have a look at the church too, it's beautiful. But we do know that Richard was, by as much as we can estimate, he was a Puritan. So this is a Catholic church. They may have been nonconformists and not attended here. We talked to a historian in the village and who couldn't find Richard or Henry's names on the parish records for this church. Ancestry.com says that Henry was buried here, so maybe he was a member, maybe he was not. Either way, it was a time of great turmoil and unrest in England, and a lot of Puritans were seeking religious freedom in the New World. And we can assume that Richard maybe did that, but we can also assume that Henry is probably buried right under our feet. So Henry is my great grandfather, and he's probably buried right underneath where we stand. So every time I go into these churches, the doors are so majestic. So you can take a look inside. So we've got some histories and guides here. We've got History of St. Nicholas Church, The Bells of Rattlesden History, and I have these books if anybody wants to look at them, which give you a lot more detail and can tell you a little bit more about your family history maybe. Now let's come over here. I want to look at this. I always love this, the list of rectors for St. Nicholas Church. So you can see if we go down to Robert Paternoster, Nicholas Dibbs, Richard Wilson, Peter Devereaux up there. These people knew our family. They knew Henry and they knew his son Richard. Now again, we talked about them being Puritans. We don't know if they went here. If they did, if Henry was a member here and maybe he raised Richard here and then maybe Richard became a defector from the Catholic Church and maybe became, a nonconformist, a Protestant. But let's say that he would have been baptized in this font here, because this is a 14th century font, so it's been here for 700 years. So if Henry raised his son in Richard in St. Nicholas Church, he would have been baptized in this very font I'm touching now. So yeah, this church dates back a long time, and I'll show you one more thing. At some point, Kimball family history buffs like myself came here and erected a little plaque placed in memory of Richard Kimball of Suffolk, England, and Ipswich, Massachusetts, by his American descendants in honor of him. So this was a church where he likely would have been in this church. It may be more likely that Henry, his father, maybe had more membership here. We can't be sure. And come look at this. There's a K on the altar and prayer desk that's also in honor of the Kimball family. And they used K as the code letter for the B-17 bombers that flew out of Rattlesden here during the Second World War. So there's a lot of Kimball history in here, which is very exciting. Kimball's from back at the turn of 1900 gave money to restore the bells here. So Kimball's have come back here and made their pilgrimage, I guess. But what we're going to do next is we are going to head to Brettenham, which is where Richard's grandfather lived, which would be Henry III. So his father was Henry IV, his grandfather was Henry III, and we're starting to get back into pre-Martin Luther times when just about everybody was Catholic, so we can assume with more surety that he was a member of the church that we're about to visit in Brettenham.